Hey guys, it's Dan, the creator of Elestrals here, back with another Ask Me Anything Q&A session as my buddy Keith is going to ask me questions from you guys in our Discord server as we continue to showcase our transparency and just give you guys answers on any difficult or interesting questions you may have about the development of Elestrals. If you enjoy these types of videos, be sure to like the video, of course, and subscribe. And of course, join our Discord server at discord.gg/Elestrals so you can join in on the fun and have your questions answered in a future AMA. Keith, glad to have you back. We got your face cam. Hopefully it'll work for this one. And I'm excited to take some questions from you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me back. I expected you to replace me, but hey, you know what? We got it. Second episode. Let's go. I'm going to get replaced in the next one.
The reality of it is we're still a small business, so budget is limited and Keith is free. So, but man, I'm glad to have you. If you guys don't know, Keith has been a part of the aDrive community for seemingly a decade now, and I'm really excited to have him as a part of the Elestrals project. So, as we did last week or a couple weeks ago, I don't know any of these questions, right? I see them in the server and I answer them when I can, but I don't know what questions I'm about to ask. So everything I am going to answer is just my kind of take and my genuine answer. As always, things can change. Stuff changes pretty quickly, but I'm excited to answer questions and hopefully give you guys some clarity on anything you might want to know about the project. And of course, you can check out the description for timestamps if there's anything particular you want to learn about. But with that out of the way, Keith, let's just dive into the questions.
All right, I'm ready to jump in.
Let's get it.
All right, our first question comes from Nabor. They ask, I see a lot of emphasis on the Greek mythology in Elestrals, which has always been interesting to me. Would there be any chance in future expansions that we see other mythologies work their way into the card game?
Yeah, so I'll kind of touch on that in a few different ways. So the first thing is, when I created Elestrals initially, there wasn't necessarily a focus for it to be on Greek mythology. That kind of happened as the project was developing out. The original focus was actually on the constellations. It was based on this idea that the constellations in ancient times were thought to be based on different creatures, and these creatures were put into the stars, and then it turns out that was very heavily rooted in Greek mythology. So the kind of line started to cross, and then at that point when we kind of came up with the idea of divine runes, I decided to add in the Greek gods into the game because I thought that familiarity and that recognizability would actually be a really positive thing for Elestral, something totally new, right? And honestly, I just have found Greek mythology to be really engaging, entertaining, something I always thought was really cool. So it was pretty natural for that progression, but it wasn't the initial kind of focus when I kind of first had the idea for Elestrals. In terms of branching into other mythologies, I think you're going to see some of that over the coming sets. I think naturally we're going to probably stay within the realm of kind of Greek mythology as kind of our base for a lot of the myths and inspiration for creatures, but I'm certainly not closed-minded to the idea of expanding into other mythologies and other cultures and different ideas like that. I think there's tons of stuff to explore, and I'm really excited to dive into all of that stuff as time develops. But I would say for the foreseeable future, you're probably going to see a pretty heavy focus on Greek mythology and some of the stories and some of the characters that are familiar in that kind of story. So bringing them into the world of Elestria and kind of changing some of the written history there is going to be really fun to do, and I'm excited to see kind of how things develop out and show you all the stuff we're working on.
Yeah, cool. I'm also kind of interested to see, in the future, if we get to that point, different mythologies interacting with other mythologies. I think that'd be kind of interesting to kind of see how that would go.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to Elestral design specifically, we're taking inspiration from all sorts of places, right? It doesn't necessarily have to just be that. I mean, we have dinosaurs in the game, right? Elestral's based on dinosaurs. It's obviously not super relevant to Greek mythology. So while it serves as kind of a foundation of, planning and ideas and, future design space, it's not necessarily the end all be all. So there's certainly room for us to integrate other ideas and other mythologies into, what we're building for Elestrals for sure. And just unique ideas in general. So yeah, definitely opportunities there.
All right, let's move on to our next question. We have a question from Bree, and they ask, what is the biggest prototype to final transformation of Elestrals?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So I'm trying to think of exactly how that's positioned, whether it's product or whether it's card or whatever. So I'll assume...
They weren't really specific, so I kind of wanted to see what you do with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell you that there's some plushies that we've gone through 7 or 8 iterations on. So, I mean, that happens. I can tell you, you might be able to see it above my head, but there's a Flurmine plushie there. There's 2 actually. I ended up scrapping those and getting it remade because I wasn't happy with how it turned out. So, that's something where you know, maybe we have a prototype and it gets changed quite a bit. In terms of like card effects and you know, Elestral design space and stuff, I definitely look at Voltempest as one. For those who followed the prototype, you know, development, Voltempest was a different creature art entirely. The whole line was, and we ended up changing it before Kickstarter. I still like the old design. I like the new design. So, you know, I kind of go back and forth. If you're someone who has a prototype Voltempest, you've got something really unique because, again, we changed the design, so it doesn't exist in the world looking like that anymore. So that's a pretty drastic shift. Otherwise, a ton of Elestrals went through effect updates multiple times. I think Ampherix was one that I probably changed a dozen times because I really wanted to nail the concept of like rising as a Phoenix, but I had to make sure it wasn't going to be OP. So in the first set, so trying to find that balance was a bit of a challenge, but I think we got there, and I think it's a really cool card. So I would say that's probably a fair answer. Some plushies, and then Voltempest from a visual standpoint, and then I would say Ampherix from like an effect standpoint kind of changed quite a few times. I'm sure there's others, but those are the ones that come to mind first.
We'll move on to our next question. It's from Wirtz. There are currently 2 types of card runes and Elestrals in 6 categories of cards. Were any card types scrapped, or any ideas about future card types? Or will these be the only card types we have for a while?
Yeah, so I can tell you that when I started the game, we obviously had Elestrals, we had Spirits, and then we added the runes, and I knew it was pretty natural for me to have the Stadium runes and the Invoke runes and Counter runes and Artifact runes. Divine runes were the last added into that process, and I think one of the most crucial added in. As we started developing the game, we, you know, kind of recognized this opportunity for Nexus, what ended up becoming Nexus, and Divine runes are such an important pillar of that. And I actually still remember the day I was sitting down with Steve or Magnitude, and we were just brainstorming, and Divine runes came up, and it was like we knew we had a really good idea there. I can tell you that there's some other ideas for future design space in terms of types of runes and different types of cards. I've got one idea that I really think is super cool, but I also want to say that the game is very new, right? Like, our first set is about to release, set 2 is hopefully coming out at the end of the year. I'm already working on set 3 and 4, but even with that being said, because those sets already introduce different things in terms of elements and different types of card effects and stuff, I think at this stage of the game, adding in another rune type is a bit much, right? You don't want to do too much too fast. As much as like I'm excited for these ideas and I want to put them into the game, I also have to slow myself down a bit, because you can't put so much new stuff in the game that it invalidates the previous stuff. What I'm trying to do is build upon the previous stuff so that more combos can be formed, and the cards from set 1 base set end up becoming, you know, better because of complementary cards in set 2 and set 3 and so on and so forth. So I don't want to invalidate things right now, or ever really, but I definitely don't want to invalidate things right now by doing too much too soon. So while there is certainly design space there, and there's certainly plans to introduce different ideas like that in the future, I would say it's probably not going to be for a while, because again, we have some other things that we're introducing into the game that I think are a little bit higher of a priority, and you know, they're I guess less impactful in terms of, you know, totally new types of cards, right? Like you're seeing set 2 is going to feature Frost as a new element. Adding in a new element to the game is a significant deal, right? So like, it would be unwise, in my opinion, to be like, okay, here's a new element and a new type of rune. You know, it just ends up being too much for players. So slow and steady, definitely build it one thing at a time. As excited as I am to dive in and see what this is going to be in 5 years, I know we have to really be mindful of that and build instead of replace, right? So I think that that's a core focus, but we've definitely got ideas, so don't worry, it's gonna get fun.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, because like the elements in themselves are like the foundation of Elestrals, right? Like the whole point is like you have these 8 elements as like the foundation of the base of the card game. So like that makes, you need to work that all out first before we can continue to expand. That makes a lot of sense.
Correct, and I would say that that's definitely a big focus. Without saying too much, to me, we got to get all 8 elements in the game, and then we can expand. So look for that.
All right, cool. Let's move on to a question from Zodi. They ask, only the bear subtype has any effects mentioning it as far as all subtypes are concerned, but could the spirits subtypes matter in the future?
So the subclasses, I will be very honest with you in saying that the subclasses were added to the game kind of as a secondary thing. I added them to the game in development and prototyping for a future-proofing design space. I basically said to myself, well, there may be a point a few years from now where I want to call upon these subclasses to create more specific archetypes and more specific combos and things like that. So I added subclasses into the game. as we were testing and testing and testing, we realized that we kind of already are using one of the subclasses, the Ursa subclass, and I started to think about what I wanted to do with set 2, which does feature the Ursa subclass as well. I've kind of already teased that on Twitter. So knowing that, I decided to make the change last minute while we were already in the proofing phase for Kickstarter. I actually had them stop everything and we resubmitted the bears so that we could indicate or include the Ursa subclass into the game and actually call on that in the subtext or in the card text itself. So the subclasses are something that I am definitely keeping an eye on. I can tell you that it's not like a huge focal point outside of the bears for at least, set 1 and set 2, but it certainly gives me options down the road. And that's really why I added the subclass of the game, was so that I had more design space down the road. If I wanted to create more specific type of archetypes or meta decks or whatever it is, to having that design space there was important. So to answer the question about the spirits, I don't know, at this moment, I don't really see a world where the subclasses on the spirits is going to impact gameplay, but that doesn't mean that it won't in the future, right? There's always a chance that can be integrated, but for now, it's more for just flavor and lore, the subclasses. They don't really have a function outside of the Ursa subclass right now.
And yeah, subclasses also add a layer of complexity, which could be cool, but at the same time, I think, like we were saying in the last question, still building the foundation.
For sure.
All right, let's go to a question from Psycho Mikey, and they ask, do you ever plan on making Elestrals that kind of colorless, in terms of they exist in the space of more than one element?
Yeah, so without saying too much on this, right, I can tell you that we have certainly explored internally the idea of non-element specific Elestrals. I can tell you that we have a few designed that are designed to essentially be any element, but I can also tell you that I'm not 100% sure that that's actually going to make it into the game at any point in the near future or in general. There's going to have to be some pretty significant testing that takes place for an Elestral to be able to accept any element to function, and I think that at the current place of where we are in design, it's like a contradiction to some of the other design space that we're headed towards. So I will say that it's an idea that I've explored. It's something that's on the radar of potential future design space. It's not a priority, and it's certainly not a focus right now. There's other things that we're focusing on in terms of Elestrals and the elements that empower them or enchant them. I think for now, that's probably something you're not going to see in the game, and it's something you may never see in the game. It's hard to really say for sure, but it's definitely not a focus right now. So definitely a good question. I don't want to say too much, but I think I definitely said already too much, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's kind of what this is all about. I think it's a cool idea. It's certainly something we've thought of. I don't necessarily think it fits right now. So
fair enough. Let's move on to a question from Turtle Falcon 55. Will you ever change the amount of stellars for one Elestral in a set if the game gets more popular, or will you leave it as is?
So I can tell you that that's certainly a challenge that we're going to be facing, right? Because assuming all is going well, Elestrals is going well and it's growing, that means that we're going to be printing more cards each set, so on and so forth, and thus having only 99 copies of a card, but we print 3-4 times the amount of booster boxes. I see how there's a bit of a discrepancy there. I can tell you that for the immediate future, until we get to a point where the print qualities are a significant multiple of what they are right now, I plan on keeping them 99 copies for the regular stellars in a set. I think when you start numbering things up to 200, I'm kind of what's the point at that point, right? When you have something that there's only 99 of, it in my mind is worth having that stamp on it that says what number you have. But there is a threshold of when you start to get to too many, it's why are we even numbering them in general? I will also say this, it's a minor point in this conversation, but it is a point nonetheless. It's very expensive for us to do what we do with stellars, and I'll explain why very quickly. When we produce a set, for example, base set, there's 125 unique cards in base set plus the box topper Pantera. So you get charged on the printing of it based on how many unique cards there are initially. That's the upfront fees for setting up all the proofing and setting up the machines and everything. Because we have so many stellars, those all count as unique cards. So even though Stellar Viscerus, there's 99 copies of it, because the card is not identical, it counts as a totally different card in the manufacturing process. Thus, instead of us printing 125 unique cards, we're really printing 1,000 unique cards, for every set because we have so many stellars and so many extra stuff. So it actually increases the price significantly. So because of that, and because of the fact that I think it's like, not really making sense to number things over, 200 or whatever, I feel like that's kind of unnecessary. I would say that it's likely I keep it to 99 for the foreseeable future. If and when we get to a point where we're printing, 10x the amount of booster boxes and stuff, then we'll look at different ideas of how we can introduce, maybe we introduce a second tier of stellar where there's stellars that are numbered and stellars that aren't numbered. Maybe we introduce, they would be different arts though. Maybe we introduce, we just introduce more stellars into the set, which is one of the things that we've kind of been playing with. Instead of having maybe 5 or 8 stellars in a set, maybe we have like 15 different stellars in a set. So you kind of scale that up. There's more options to pull the stellars. There's still only 99 copies of each. There's a few things we can do with that. I'm going to kind of cross that bridge when I get there. I've certainly thought about it, but I would say that don't expect that number to be, I got number 15 out of 250. Like, I think 99 is really where that stops.
Yeah. No, that's a very unique problem to have. I never knew about the manufacturing part of like how they are technically all unique cards.
Yeah, and it actually creates a lot of extra work too, because we have to, not only do we manually number them, but we have to do the checks of everything, and like it's just a lot more cards to check over. I will say there is a solution to this. The solution is that we can print the stellars without the stamp on it and then stamp it on ourselves afterwards, but it doesn't look as good. And I think it also opens up for a little more room for error. And that's like something that I definitely don't want to mess with. I'm very, very strict with the factories and being very clear that you can only print 1 copy of each stellar, and that is it. No exceptions. So I've been very, very, clear about that with both the previous manufacturer and our new manufacturer that we're working with. So hopefully we'll be good. We should be.
Time will tell. Time will tell. All right, let's move on to a question from a cat, can't tell. As the game grows in the future, do you think the different elements will fall in line with a sort of identity? For example, Magic the Gathering has their color pie, and over the years they have outlined what that color should be strong at, weak at, and the ideals behind them. Or do you think it'll be more free-form in design to allow for broader applications?
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot of, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. I can tell you that I designed Elestrals with the idea that decks would be built with multi-element, and I'm going to continue to design the game to encourage that. I think it's a positive thing. Generally, you'll have a primary element that you're running a deck off of because there's going to be a core strategy, but I think the game is in its best place when you're encouraged to use some fire elements, or you're encouraged to use a few Leviathans. Like, I can tell you that I just built a deck that's primarily wind, but I have a few Leviathans in there for a few tech cards like Tsunami and stuff. So that is definitely a design space I want to head towards. In terms of the elements having identities, I can say that yes, I mean, they kind of do have some general identities as it stands now, but I don't use that as like a cut and dry like framework that every card of that element has to fit into that, because I want cards of certain elements to work with other elements. So a good example of that is something like Jolton, Searching Out Stadiums, generally best used in Thunder decks, but some other decks may use it if they really rely heavily on Stadiums. Elechick, Searching Out Divine Runes, kind of similar there. Things like Smoltuga, a Water Elestral, Searching Out Fire Elestrals, really, really cool stuff there. In terms of the elements, there are some loose, like I said, definitions, right? Earth has some regeneration. It's got, pretty good stats overall. It generates, a lot of power from utilizing Foliage Forest. Thunder is very control-oriented, hand destruction, kind of controlling what your opponent can do, rune destruction. Things like Water are very defense-heavy, kind of flooding the board, getting your Elestrals onto the board very quickly with things like Tadpuff, getting Spirits onto the board and nexusing them around with Poseidon, having that draw power. You've got a couple different core strategies there. Fire is very aggro, offensive, doesn't really have any sort of rune control, is very much so get in your face with Necruff and try to beat things down. You've obviously got the mill strategy and the direct damage strategy that falls into fire with things like Eruption, things like Humbus and Cinder. So there are some loose kind of ideas that have been integrated into the elements, but I can tell you, like, it's pretty unlikely for me to sit here and say, okay, I'm going to introduce a new mill card and put it in fire. I'd probably introduce a new mill card and put it in a different element, because that'll say, okay, if I want to build a mill deck, I'm already got a nice core with fire, but now if I really want to build it, I want to maybe use an earth card or whatever to kind of facilitate that strategy to the highest level. So I will say that in design space moving forward, You're gonna see probably less multicolor cards like runes, more element-specific runes, and also kind of more diverse strategies going across the different archetypes and playstyles across the different elements. So those loose definitions will certainly exist, but it's definitely not something I'm constraining myself to in the design space.
Yeah, that'll lead to also some like unique combinations of play, because if somebody already orients themselves towards, you know, like personally I prefer thunder like over other elements, but like if basically because of that control aspect, but if there's like more control type cards also in now wind and also like water, and I can like incorporate that into what I'm trying to do, like that's going to lead to more unique decks and gameplay, and that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. I think like the kind of top tier thunder deck right now uses Earthquake, right? So it's going to splash in some Earth Spirits to utilize Earthquake. So that's the kind of stuff we want to see. That's the kind of stuff that I personally want to see in design. Naturally, there are going to be decks that will be strong that are just one element, but I really do want to encourage multi-element deck building, and that's going to be a big focus of mine in future design space. I think that it makes the game more fun. It makes the Spirit deck very crucial to conserve that resource and strategically use it, and that's something that I think is good for the game. So that'll be something I focus on as we develop out future sets.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. Let's move on to a question from Fortune's Rage.
Hey.
I know. I was like, oh my god. The Fortune's Rage. Will the mobile game Elestrals be a free-to-play game or pay-to-play game when it comes out?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was actually scripting out an update video before this call, Keith, and that's one of the things I'm going to touch on in that update video. So the update video will be out before this, but I'll answer the question nonetheless. So the plan right now, we do have an idea for our monetization. I know nobody wants to hear that, but the reality of it is, for us to roll out this mobile game, we're going to have to be able to make something, right? I can tell you that it's very expensive to make a mobile game. That is why pretty much all of the trading card games out there do not have mobile games unless you're one of the biggest ones, right? It's very expensive. It's very costly. There's a lot of development costs. So it's a challenge. But I will say this. I originally went into the mobile game kind of envisioning it to be like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Link system, where when a new set came out, you'd be able to essentially buy virtual packs and open them and so on and so forth. And I really think that they have a cool system there. But after further designing the app and considering what the main purpose of the app is and where Elestrals is right now, I've actually decided that for the time being, this could always change, but I think we're in a good spot with this. For the time being, when you get access to the mobile app, you will have every functional card available to you. So you will be able to construct the best functional deck possible. There will be no limitations to you as a player in terms of construction and card availability. Our monetization will come strictly from cosmetics. So that'll be the opportunity to potentially get new sleeves in the app, avatars or stellar rare versions of cards or things like that. We have some really cool ideas that we're working on in terms of monetization. But again, it will all be to enhance the experience from a cosmetic perspective, not impacting gameplay. So that's the plan for set 1. That's the plan for set 2. I don't know what the future holds beyond that. I think we're going to basically roll this out, test the monetization model as it is with purely cosmetic, and kind of see how that functions and see if it's something sustainable. Yeah. I really don't know until we kind of roll it all out, but we'll be able to take feedback and adjust. But I would say that the plan right now is most certainly to allow the app to be completely free to play and allow people to learn the game and play the game at the highest level without having to spend any money on the app itself. And then for those of you who do support via the cosmetic options and things like that, that'll go a long way in us being able to develop it further. So that's definitely the plan right now. That's the strategy right now. Again, I'm not going to say it's never going to change. I just have no idea. We're very much so early stages. We're going to stay in beta for quite a while. But, just being very transparent, that's where my head's at. That's where the plan's at. And I hope that we can support the game that way through a cosmetic only model, because it does make the game more accessible for people. And that's really what the end goal of the app is. Allow people to learn the game, play the game with their friends, and have fun, playing Elestrals at the highest level without having any sort of barriers of entry. So that's definitely the plan there. And that's what we're going to probably stick to for at least the foreseeable future, but maybe indefinitely. But again, I just don't know how it's gonna go. So I have to at least pay our development costs at some point. We're kind of just eating that right now, but at some point, hopefully we can have the app at least fund itself. So That's
Very
definitely
true.
the plans.
Yeah, servers cost money, and I know people never like microtransactions, right? Like microtransactions is always like the bane of existence in like games today, but
Yeah.
it's necessary, like, to keep the app going. Like it costs money to have the server. It costs money to build it. Like,
Yeah.
so again,
I mean,
it's a very like precarious situation of like, what do you do and don't do? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
do not
just,
envy you on that.
just being like really honest, we have 2 developers working on the app right now, and that's what they're pretty much doing, and they're both doing so with like very generous rates to Elestrals, right? So they're giving us a significant discount to build this right now. So it's very generous of them as we're in our early stages. But if it was anyone else kind of thing, we're probably paying a lot more to develop this, and there'd be a lot more challenges ahead. So luckily they're awesome, and they are compensated, of course, but they do so in a very generous way out of passion at building this project. So big shout outs to the squad there, because they've been awesome, and I'm really excited to roll out the app for you guys. Just hang tight, it's coming soon. So
All right, let's go to a question from. I'm gonna pronounce it as Aunu05. You had mentioned current Elestrals getting ascensions in later sets. What about Barabog or future Elestrals possibly getting pre-ascensions in some way?
yeah, so I can tell you that yes, there are Elestrals in base set that do receive ascensions in set 2. There's also Elestrals in base set that are going to receive ascensions in set 3. There's going to be Elestrals that receive pre-ascensions as well down the road. So those are all things that are in consideration in the design space. I can say specifically about the Elestral you asked about, yes, maybe, eventually. Maybe. So yeah, we've got some really cool plans there. I can tell you that in set 2, there's 2 that are coming to mind at least. Elestrals that are ascensions of set 1 Elestrals. And I think they're both really good, and they're both really awesome in terms of design. I really, one of them is chef's kiss, very good. So yeah, we definitely are going to explore that, and it's something to look forward to as set 2 and future sets release.
That's exciting. I mean, everyone loves set 1. Like, I just remember, again, to go down a trip down memory lane, just when we were revealing all the cards in set 1 and like all the different Elestrals, and everyone losing their minds and also trying to guess what things were.
Yes, I'm very excited for hype season for set 2, and it's taken me a lot to not start it right now. From a marketing perspective, guys, like, as much as I want to show you more of set 2 right now, we really need to focus the next few months on set 1 still, even though for many of you guys, you're familiar with everything, but there's so many people who maybe back Kickstarter but didn't spend the time to go through every Elestral, and they're going to learn them as they open cards and stuff. So we're going to teach everyone about the Elestrals we have. There's a lot of lore. We're writing a lot of really cool stuff, like little kind of entries about them, giving some little backstories and stuff like that, kind of building on that lore slowly but surely. So stay tuned. It's going to be exciting. You're going to probably see us on social media recapping a lot of the Elestrals and really announcing them almost like it's for the first time, but they'll be familiar to you, right? So you'll see a post of us talking about Drithaya or whatever, and for many people that may be their first time seeing Drithaya, as we get closer to the fall, you're going to start to see those set 2 teasers come, and we're going to really ramp things up. I can tell you we're already working on some of our marketing for set 2 right now, some of the animations and things that we're going to do for reveals. So it's very exciting. I wish I could just throw it all out there now, because I think set 2 is just so good. But I think we have to kind of hold off and focus on what's in front of us right now, which is teaching people about set 1. So
yeah, for sure, it makes sense. It just, I also am ready for hype. It's like, again, that's so good. All right, let's move on to a question from Wreck-It Rob TCG, and they ask, I am one of those people that like to take a deep dive into the lore and story development of Elestrals. So my question is, what is your vision for casters and titans, and when might we get some more details on them?
Yeah, so as part of our Kickstarter, we ended up teaming up with Derek Sidaway, who's an international best-selling author. He's been someone who's been behind the scenes and really working on the lore. I've also hired another person to help with the lore and development of that, kind of those entries I was talking about before. We've got some really cool ideas. We shared a short recently of Drithaya and how that ties to the constellation Fructus Draconis, which is built in the world of Elestrals. So we've got some really cool ideas in terms of expanding the lore and kind of spoon-feeding that to you guys over the coming months. I think while the initial plan was for Derek to write these short stories and kind of put them out, we kind of took a step back, and we're actually working on kind of the framework of the whole world before we do that. So that way we can ensure that we have the consistencies of the stories and stuff like that we want. I know it may sound a little funny to say it, but while I have obviously a general, very high level overview of the world and how everything works and all that stuff, we're still working on, nailing down some of the finer details of how all these interactions work and stuff. Lore is something that I really want to make sure that we take the time to develop and expand on and have consistent and be very thoughtful and thought out. So I don't want to just rush to put things out there just to put things out there to expand the world. I want to make sure that we're meticulous about it, and that the information that we're putting out there is like I said, well developed and really adds to what we're trying to build. So you're gonna see that stuff coming over the coming months. I can tell you that we're just about finished with kind of our world codex, we're calling it. We have like an internal document called the codex, and that basically features everything about Elestrals from our perspective, the team working on it, to basically outline the relationship between an Elestral and a caster, and the relationship between the gods and the casters and the Elestrals, and the hierarchical structure between the gods and how they're vying for spots in the pantheon, and kind of the relationship of the world itself and how different parts of the world have different affinities to different Elestrals. There's a lot of really cool stuff that is already written, and it's all kind of being fleshed out and finalized behind the scenes. Once that's all set up, then you're going to start to see us kind of give you a little bit more information about the story and the lore and things like that. So I would say, keep an eye out towards the end of the summer, going into the fall, to get more information like that. You're going to start to see some of those posts on social media, and it's an exciting time. It's one of the best parts of the project, and like I said, I don't want to rush into it just to do it. I want to really make sure that we can, put our best effort into it and really create something special. Because I know for so many people, myself included, the Elestrals are awesome, but what makes them even more awesome is seeing them in different ways, understanding their purpose and why they're there, and how they interact with not only other Elestrals, but the people in the world and things like that. So all of that stuff is so crucial to this project, and it's certainly a big focus. So just hang tight, because it's going to be awesome when it starts to release.
I'm definitely excited also to learn more about the lore and again, the conflict and the struggles, because that's what makes a good story, right? Is to have something, a goal to work towards, or somebody to try to overcome, or try to
yes.
pass some sort of so I'm very excited to see kind of how this all shapes up.
Yes, and
I've been wanting the lore myself.
I can say that from a high level, we do have kind of that whole story to climax to resolution. We have that written, right? So as if we were developing an RPG game, which we were working on. We paused at this time to focus a little bit more on the card stuff right now, but we do have a lot of that stuff already kind of sketched out, and you're going to start to see some of that stuff weaved into the card sets as they release. But again, like I said, it's so weird because I'm already on set 3. I spent a lot of yesterday writing effects for set 3. So while it seems so crazy that that's how far ahead we are, we kind of have to be. That's just the nature of this because of how long the manufacturing process takes. So so yeah, you'll start to see that weaved in more as things develop, and we kind of set up some of these rules internally and some of these definitions internally. Then we're gonna start to kind of share that with you guys.
All right, cool. Let's move on to a question from Dane, and Dane asks, when do you think the next community held event could take place? Would it be another create a card or effect, or something else entirely?
Yeah, so I've kind of held off on heavily driven stuff like that, because I think we're all in this waiting period for everyone to get the cards. I feel like once everyone has their stuff, Elestrals really starts at that point, right? So yeah. I think over the next few months, as the time I'm recording this last night, I'm recording this on the 22nd. You guys probably won't see it for a few days after this, but as of last night, people started getting their cards in Australia for the first time, which is crazy. I was legitimately in my bed until midnight watching streams of people opening cards. It was such an unreal experience. I can't even communicate with words just how special that was. But yeah, as more people start to get their stuff, I think we're going to start to do more community-driven stuff. I know I personally am going to be using a lot of my time to stream and teach people the game, do openings, showcase the game as much as I can, collaborate with people. Again, teach is going to be a big one. I'm going to ask you in the community to help us with that. The way Elestral succeeds is by being an awesome community, helping people learn the game, telling people about the game. If we can execute on those things, we're going to be in a really positive position. So yeah, those are community-driven events are going to be a big pillar, especially over the, kind of the rest of the year as we kind of grassroots this, right? I'm not going to pretend like we're some big company. There's not going to be like a huge regional World Series, whatever structure right now. It's going to take some time. We're going to kind of get there slowly. But we can do really cool things. I've already got ideas for like, mobile app tournaments or webcam tournaments with real cards, doing themes over the weeks. Like, okay, this week we're gonna do Thunder only or whatever, right? Like, there's a lot of cool things we can do. So, but to do that, I need to make sure that we have the people in place to help run it. We're in the process of creating like the training documents for more judges and things like that. So it really is gonna be piece by piece. We're gonna get there for sure, but definitely gonna be a big community focus in terms of all of that. And development of future cards and effects and ideas and so on and so forth. So certainly will be a big thing, and that'll be one of the differences that you'll see with Elestrals from other games. Just as you see in me doing these Q&A type of videos, transparency, openness, honesty, me being involved at every stage of this project. So you have the confidence that we're doing the right things and we're involved. So I'm really excited, and I mean, if you've been following from the outside, just go to the Discord. You'll see I'm in there all the time, answering questions.
Come on in.
So we're really doing it. So I'm very excited about what that's going to look like over the months.
The community really does come together for like the few events that we did do, like naming Elestrals or like all sorts of stuff. I just remember like putting together like an entire. We had screenshot like hundreds of replies.
Yeah,
we had them in a separate channel to like people to go through. Like it was crazy. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, like, and that's something we'll do a little bit more of too. It does get a little trickier, again, like for me to say, hey, I want you to name this set 3 Elestral when like set 2 is not even out yet, and like you don't even know what the element for set 3 is, if there is a new element and all that. So I have to kind of weave intelligently through the weeds there, but I think that there's going to be opportunities for people to give their input and give their feedback and contribute directly to the design process as well. But again, just know that we are a little ahead, so it is we can only do so much there, but I'm very excited for the community-driven stuff. So.
All right, we're gonna now move on to a question from let's see here, Ludicrous Lunatic. Would an art competition where the winners get special copies of their art on an official card or cards be possible in the future, kind of like the Pokemon Art Academy contests?
Sure. So that's something that I really love. I really love that idea, but I will tell you that there's a few hang-ups with the idea, and I'll explain what they are. So the first one being that we would need to get a legal team involved to ensure that everyone is protected in this process, right? If I have to make sure that the business Elestrals is protected, first and foremost. I know people don't like to hear these things, but it's the reality of running a business, right? So I have to make sure that we have terms and conditions that say if you submit your art that we can use it and so on and so forth. So that way there's no hang-ups down the road. The other issue is the following. While I can say, okay, we're going to have this competition and I can award the winner a certain prize or whatever, I know that there's a negative sentiment in the community sometimes where, whether you agree or not, there's a negative sentiment of saying, okay, I'm going to hold this art contest and only the winner or the top 3 people are going to get a prize. Everyone else, you have to do this for free. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, why don't you pay the artist? You should pay the artist. And I totally get that. You're right. People should get paid. But you can't really run a contest like that and pay every single submission. Like, how do you even justify that? Like, how does that work, right? So Pokemon gets away with it because they're this huge company and they probably have some different things and stuff like that. You could also make the argument of like, well, if you don't want to do the contest, then don't enter the contest, right? That's kind of another train of thought. So those are some things that I'm gonna have to figure out, right? Because again, what I don't want to do is I don't want to be like, hey, here's a contest, you can enter your art. If you get picked, you win this prize and you're in the game, or your art's in the game. That's great. But you know, like I said, I'm no stranger to online negativity and people having, you know, strong opinions about different things. So that's something that I would need to really sit down with the team and gather feedback on and make sure that whatever we decided to do would be fair, it would be open, it would be honest, and it would be appropriate for the community to encourage artists and lift artists up and give them really awesome opportunities and make sure that we can compensate people as best as possible, right? I can't run a contest and say, okay, everyone who submits, you get paid. I can't do that. That's not like a thing, right? I have artists that we pay to create the art, right? So again, some things that I would need to figure out and kind of focus on to make that come to fruition, and I would need to lean on some of the people on my team and some lawyers and things like that to make sure that we're doing the right thing. But it's something I'm certainly open to. But again, there's some little loopholes or not loopholes, but obstacles we need to kind of jump through and figure out what's going to make the most sense for our you know, the company and the community to ensure that, you know, everyone is treated appropriately and fairly, and you know, we don't have any sort of negative sentiments with what otherwise would be a really fun project. So.
It's like, again, nobody wants to think about the legal perspective, but you have to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's a business. Like, unfortunately, we have to.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, it's my job to run the business. So, you know, obviously I create the game, I write the effects, things like that, but it's as the one in charge, I have to think of these things. So luckily I have a good lawyer, and, you know, I run things by them pretty frequently. I've got a call with them actually in a few days to go over some of our stuff. So, yeah, we're making sure we do all the things that we can do the right way and ensuring that we don't run into any issues down the road. And, you know, the business itself is protected, and you know, the intellectual property that we're creating is protected. And as long as we're doing that, then I think we'll be in good shape from that perspective. And then again, I want to have a really positive sentiment when it comes to artists, because I can tell you that I've only hired artists from the community, right? Like every single artist we have is involved in either the community that I've been a part of for the last decade, Pokemon, of course, or, you know, they got involved in Elestrals in some way. So I've had opportunities to get agencies to get artists in from, you know, big companies and stuff, but I chose specifically to work with our community because I want to lift those people up. To me, that, like, this is my roots. Yeah. This is what I grew, you know, my whole brand off of, is these awesome people being around in this community and supporting each other and things like that. So it's been a really fun experience for me to be able to, you know, help them live their dreams and fulfill some of the things that they want to do with their incredible talents. So that's always a big focus for me, and it's something that I want to make sure that we never lose sight of in development of Elestrals.
And that's awesome. Again, I haven't met all of the artists, but I've met a few, and again, because they were community members, and then, like, next thing I know, I was like, wow, you know more about this game than I do now. Congratulations.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, I can tell you that, like, Dan Reyes, our creative director, he's someone who is involved in my channel for many years prior. Tori has created a handful of cards, and Tori, another member of the aDrive community for a long time. And there's countless others, right? I can tell you that the Elite Four crew, I found them through Pokemon Xenoverse, the fan-made game. They designed a ton of fan-made Pokemon in that. So, again, a lot of the artists on this project were really, you know, kind of plucked, I guess, from the community, or you know, joined the project from kind of the community that we've been a part of. So that's something, again, that I really think is special, and it's something that I really want to focus on as we build this out.
Nice. All right. We're going to move on now to a question from Red Baron. I think we kind of answered this already, but Nexus is a really cool mechanic. Do you have any plans to implement more unique mechanics like them in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of go with the other thing, you know, the other question regarding, you know, types of runes and stuff, where, yes, you know, obviously new mechanics, new ideas, new concepts, all that stuff is certainly in the sketchboard for future design space, but again, you don't want to do too much too fast. It becomes overwhelming for players. It naturally will power creep. I know, again, another term that people love to use in the community. You know, it eventually, naturally, if you introduce too many things too fast, it is naturally going to power creep over the other stuff. So right now, my focus is building upon the sets that exist. So to me, set 2 it's like a puzzle piece that fits into set 1. That's the best way I can describe it. Set 2 does not invalidate set 1. It's a puzzle piece that fits into set 1. It obviously is going to introduce a new element, which is a huge change in itself, but everything else will naturally kind of fit into the puzzle that is Elestrals, and I think that is certainly the main focus in terms of design space for me for at least the next couple of years, is not doing too much too fast, and you know, really making sure that we're building something off of the last thing that we made.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of set 2 that I haven't seen, and I've seen very, very minimum amount of it, but like everything that I have seen, like it really does fit. Like it has its spot. Like it makes sense why it's there.
Yeah, I'm really, like I said, I can't. Obviously, I'm tooting my own horn here, right? And we're very early in terms of you guys seeing set 2 and stuff, but I feel so good about it. I think that this is my first time creating a card game, right? So I don't know everything, right? I'm not gonna pretend like I have all the answers. I don't. So naturally, I think that you're gonna see the card effects get better, right? You're gonna see the ideas get better because I'm gonna learn more. I can tell you my development of set 2 was way faster than my development of set 1. Not because I cut corners I just know more. I just have a better idea of what I want to do. I know how to do the process better. I know how to be more efficient in the process so that I know how I like to work, so I can, map things out in a certain way. Whereas for set 1, I was trying to figure all those things out, right? We were figuring out our templates. We were figuring out kind of the design space of what cards can do. So naturally, you're going to see, I think, the game get better over time. Just because I'm going to get better, I'm going to know more, and I'm going to be able to take in that feedback from you guys and create something really awesome. So I think that's something really special, right? And again, I'm not going to pretend like I'm perfect. I don't know everything. I'm not going to say that we're not going to have an OP card slip through the cracks or whatever. Like, those things can happen, but I can be reactionary to those things, and I can be mindful of those things to ensure a fun and balanced game environment as we develop this.
Well, Dan, I have one more question for you.
Oh, man. All right.
And it is not a question that the community asks. It's a question that I'm going to ask you. And it has something to do with kind of what you talked about earlier. Last night, some people in Australia got their cards. And you and I both stayed up way too late watching it. And, like, Stellar Viserys was pulled. Like, all sorts of things. Just tell me more. Because, again, I could talk probably for, like, 10, 15 minutes about, like, how it made me feel. I want to know more about, like, again, like, as the creator, it's like from spending so much of your time and, like, you sacrifice some time, like, away with your family and all sorts of things, like, to get to this point where cards could be in people's hands, and now it's in some people's hands right now. Just talk to me.
Yeah. So I think one, it feels awesome, right? And I feel like I'm almost like tearing up a little bit, right? Because it has been a lot. I'm not gonna pretend like this process has been easy. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of work, a lot of work, way more work than I ever thought it was going to be. It's been a lot of risk. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, guys. Like, I was in a really good spot with my content career, man. I was doing really well. Things were on the up and up, and, I built such an incredible community over the years. Obviously, me shifting a lot of my focus to Elestrals has, there's a level of inherent risk with that, right? Because I'm kind of, shifting a lot of my time and my priorities and stuff. But I can tell you that I'm so incredibly excited for the future of what we're building here. I'm so confident in what we're doing, and seeing people get their cards is honestly like a magical thing. Like, I'm over the moon. I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous too, right? Because now we're in a situation where, like, the opportunity for criticism is now on the table, right? The opportunity for issues or concerns is now more on the table. That's just the reality of it. That's part of putting something out there. But I'm confident in the product that we have. I'm confident in the game that we have. I think the game is awesome. I think the cards are awesome. They look awesome. They feel awesome. And, any sort of criticisms or anything like that, I'm just taking that as knowledge and feedback so I can make it better, right? And that's going to be my answer. If you have an issue, if you get your cards and there's any sort of issues or anything, you're welcome to DM me and just let me know. Just, be constructive about it. You don't have to be mean. If you run into anything, please. I had a great conversation last night with somebody who, had a question about one of the cards that they had gotten. And, I said, hey, listen, I appreciate your feedback. This is, we're doing this in the future for this or whatever. Always can take that in. So I'm really excited, man. And I can tell you that, we've seen about 4 or 5 people get their stuff in Australia at the time of us filming this, and it's been nothing but positive, right? Everyone is super stoked. A lot of good comments about the card quality, a lot of good comments about the holos, just the packaging, everything. So a lot of positivity, right? Naturally, when you have this many people involved, there's going to be, opinions on both sides of things, which is fine. And that's, I'm not going to be immune to criticism or anything like that. So definitely open to it. It's exciting times, and I'm just so thankful, man. Like I said, it's been a lot. It's been a lot to get to this point, and it's a lot moving forward. I'm not gonna sugarcoat things. This is an endeavor. This is a serious thing, and it's put me in a situation where I have to do a lot of reprioritization in my life to ensure that, one, obviously I'm focusing on my family and I'm giving my time to my family, but in terms of the content I'm creating for aDrive content and around the Pokemon franchise versus Elestrals and that kind of stuff, and there's certainly some balancing to be done there, but I can tell you that I'm definitely not going to be taking any shortcuts from Elestrals. That is my priority when it comes to my work, and you have my commitment to excellence in this game and doing the best I can to create a product that is worth picking up, worth playing, worth sharing to your friends and telling people about it. And you have my word that I'm gonna put everything I can into this. I really am, and I'm honestly just so pumped, dude. It's so cool. It's like how like I tweeted last night, like this, people are opening my game. Like this is the coolest thing ever. It's really happening now, and I just thank everybody. I can tell you, I DM'd a handful of people last night, thanking them personally for backing the project, and I'm just here. I'm excited. I want to be in it with you guys. Like I share the same passion you do about games, card games, and monster franchise, right? Like that's why I created this. So I'm with you guys. I can't wait to see these polls. I can't wait to see you guys get your first stellars or your favorite hollows, or I want to be there and share that excitement with you. And we're doing this all together. So I'm with you guys, and I can't wait for what's to come. But man, it's gonna be special when I see more openings. I woke up this morning to the Stellar Viscerus clip, and I didn't stay up for it.
We were so excited for you to see it. I stayed up for it.
Yeah.
So let me tell you, I am exhausted.
Yeah, yeah. So for those who don't know, the day we're recording this, a couple people in Australia got their stuff, and we did see our first Stellar pull, which was Stellar Viscerus from No Brainer, and it's the first Stellar to be pulled for Kickstarter, which is really awesome, and it's very fitting that it's Viscerus. That was a very, very important card in development, and it was actually made for Magnitude, who is our app developer, so big shout outs to him. I know he was pretty pumped to see his kind of Elestral in the game and get pulled in that capacity, so it'll be more exciting as more people open Stellars. There's Stellars that people have never seen before that are going to get open soon, so it's going to be a wild ride, and I'm just really thankful. Like I said, I'm just really thankful. I'm really stoked, and we got a lot of work in front of us, but if anyone can work hard and make it happen, I feel pretty confident myself. So
I think you can do it. I really do. I could talk at length too, but people don't want to hear me talking about watching this for 10-15 minutes. But yeah, no, it was just super awesome. But yeah, and yeah, that's all we have for today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Keith, for coming on and giving us some questions from the Elestrals community. And thank you guys in our Discord server for asking in the AMA channel. If you guys want to join our Discord, it's discord.gg/Elestrals. You can ask your questions there. People usually upvote comments they want to see answered. I'll sometimes just answer them via text if I have the time to do so. But otherwise, we're going to keep this series going. So check the description if there's anything you want to see, or leave comments if you have any thoughts on anything I said today. And as always, thank you so much for being a part of this project. We're really building this together as a community. This is just the beginning. This is going to be a wild ride, so I hope you guys are ready, because this is going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to do something that nobody's ever done before. So strap in. Let's do it. Thank you again, Keith. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Bye, guys.